Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Alia Takadine. I'm with the Disaster Legal Assistance Collaborative and Legal Access Alameda, who staffs the collaborative. And I'm joined today with my colleague, Edward. Edward, I can let you introduce yourself.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Edward Kay. I am the lead attorney for the title clearing project, which I'll discuss later after Alia.
So we're going to be giving you a short presentation on the collaborative, as well as some programs that we have available for Californians across the state, and some smaller scale programs we have as well. So I will go ahead and get started on our presentation about general legal issues we see during disaster, as well as some of the programs that we have to help assist with those. And then I'll pass it to Edward, who will be talking about our incredible title clearing program. So please bear with me for one moment as I share my screen. Okay. So as I mentioned, I am presenting on behalf of the Disaster Legal Assistance Collaborative, which is a statewide collaborative of legal practitioners, organizations, and government officials across the across the state. And we provide disaster legal assistance. We're also presenting in partnership with the California Office of Emergency Services LISTOS program, which is an incredible disaster preparedness program that we have been honored to be working with this year. So just a quick table of contents for today's presentation. I'll be giving you a brief introduction to DLAC, and then moving into some common legal issues that we see after a disaster. And then I'll be talking about our different programs that we offer within DLAC. So that's our free legal answers program, the Disaster Legal Assistance Hotline, and our website. So as I mentioned, the Disaster Legal Assistance Collaborative is made up of legal aid organizations, law firms, nonprofits, FEMA, and the Red Cross. And we provide free legal services to disaster survivors across California. Some common legal issues that we tend to see after a disaster are related to employment. So many issues related to wage and labor theft. Unemployment benefits, being unable to access them, or other issues that arise around unemployment benefits, as well as unsafe working conditions that can arise because of the conditions of a disaster or the aftermath. We also see some issues in replacing documents that are necessary to apply for aid. So that is someone's ID, driver's license, social security card, and EBT information. We also see quite a few issues with public benefits. So applying for or redirecting unemployment, TANF or SNAP and food stamps, Medicaid, and Social Security benefits. I don't know if you can all see that there's still people trickling in from the waiting room. So welcome all who just joined us. We also see issues related to FEMA or the Small Business Administration. We see issues with applying for FEMA assistance in the first place. So whether that's temporary housing, home repairs, or home replacements. Also applying for SBA disaster loans to individuals. We do see some issues related to that. And then in the case of FEMA assistance denials, there are quite a few issues that arise with FEMA appeals. For homeowners, we encounter a lot of questions around mobile homes and what's covered or not covered in people's insurance, foreclosures, clearing property titles, which our expert is here today, Edward, and issues with people's mortgages. In terms of consumer issues, we see price gouging and other scams related to home repairs or disaster, just kind of emergency resources. And as I mentioned, repair contractor scams and disputes. We, especially after this winter, have been seeing landlord and tenant issues. So those are issues with security deposits or evictions, private lease terminations, and then questions about repairs if tenants are living in conditions that are unlivable in their rented house, as well as rent increases. A lot of the issues we see are around insurance. So people either being underinsured or their insurance not covering for example, not being covered for flooding. So we do encourage people to take proactive steps to maximize insurance coverage. And we also see quite a few insurance claim disputes where someone may have thought that their homeowner's insurance covered flooding, but it actually doesn't, or they're underinsured in a specific situation. So we really encourage people to really know their rights, including what exactly their insurance policy covers and what it does not cover. So now I'll be talking about a few of our programs that we offer. The first being California Free Legal Answers. So this is statewide. It's a free platform where qualified clients can ask their disaster-related questions. So there's a very easy sign-up process. People can access it from our website. The first step is to visit california.freelegalanswers.org and create an account. We encourage people to submit their legal question with as much detail as possible. There can be like minute details that may not seem important, but actually end up being covered under a specific body of law. So when we're training people to help clients with it, we really encourage them to encourage the patron to just add, to over explain almost. And then on the back end, volunteer attorneys are connected with the clients based on their questions, or with the person asking the question. And then the patron can log back into their account to view the answer from the volunteer attorney. And we also staff the Disaster Legal Assistance Helpline. So that is open to disaster survivors in California who would like to speak to an attorney for legal advice related to disaster. So the helpline is pretty self-explanatory. Our phone number is here in this presentation. It's also on our website. And there's a series of prompts that the caller can follow to reach legal aid providers that are in their area. If there's no legal provider in their area, they can press 9 to leave a voicemail with DLAC, and a staff member will return that call to complete an intake and then schedule a brief phone appointment with a volunteer attorney to help resolve that issue. We do make sure that everybody who calls in is able to speak to an attorney, whether that's local or within the state of California. We do make sure that everybody who calls in is able to have their questions answered. And finally, our DLAC website has all of the resources I shared, as well as some connections to the Red Cross, to FEMA, and we also update it with specific declared disasters and resources related to each county. So just to recap that quickly, we have resources on disaster preparedness and recovery in general. We do have COVID-19 related resources, and especially information on the eviction moratorium. We have FAQs on legal issues that can arise. Most of the issues that I mentioned earlier, we have resources, fact sheets, handouts, and just additional information. And as I mentioned, we do continue to update the website with specific declared disasters on the state and federal level, and resources to apply for emergency funding. And our website is down here. It's disasterlegalservicesca.org. And I will pass it off to Edward. And we will have time at the end for questions. So I know if there are any presentations if there are any questions in the chat, I'm not able to see it, but we will leave room after that, after we finish. So Edward, I will pass it off to you.
And thank you, Alia. So again, my name is Edward Kay. I'm the supervising attorney for the Title Clearing Project. The Title Clearing Project is funded by California Housing Finance Agency. Cal HFA supports the needs of low and moderate income renters and homeowners by providing financing and programs with a focus on equity. The Title Clearing Project is a new program aimed at disaster survivors who may face legal issues which create significant obstacles to their recovery. An example of a disaster survivor is a homeowner whose primary residence has been affected by a natural disaster, such as wildfire, earthquake, or flood. And our program has two tracks. One is disaster preparedness, and the other is disaster recovery. Under disaster preparedness, our goal is to educate the public and assist them with pro bono attorneys that can help with the title clearing process before a disaster strikes. And this means making sure a homeowner has a clear title, proof of ownership, and also proof of occupancy. And just to review, generally, what is title? Title is a document that shows legal ownership of a specific real estate property. Clear title is ownership of a property that is free of claims, doubts, or disputes about ownership. And a clear title generally means that no one else has a financial interest in your property. Cloudy or bad title is when there's a claim or an encumbrance that affects the ownership of the property. And this claim or encumbrance is a limit or restriction on how an owner can use their property. Cloudy titles arise when property is not transferred or deeded to the next owner. And this can happen when someone dies without a will, or a family doesn't administer a will, or a transfer deed doesn't get recorded. And our program assists homeowners with reviewing their title. And this is done through conducting a title search through the county recorder's office or through a third-party title search company. And again, the goal is to see if, in fact, the homeowner has clear title, or if we can identify a lien or an unknown mortgage or someone else's name, on the property. And we're trying to do this before disaster strikes. If we do find out there is a cloud on title, our program will match the client with a voluntary attorney. This attorney represents the client in a limited scope manner. The assistance could be as simple as drafting a new deed, transferring the property from the prior owner to the current. This case can also be complex, as filing a probate action for a child to transfer the deed from a deceased parent to a child. The attorney can also help them in filing satisfaction of mortgages or removing an old lien. Lastly, in the disaster preparedness program has the goal to promote homeowners having digital copies of their deeds, their property tax bills, construction receipts, general documentation to prove ownership and also to prove occupancy. The other track for our program is disaster recovery. Many disaster survivors who are homeowners need financial assistance to help them with post-disaster recovery process. In order to qualify for federal disaster assistance through FEMA, the homeowner must prove ownership of the home and that they occupied the home immediately before the disaster. This proof of ownership and occupancy is required for FEMA assistance, also for state and local agencies, and sometimes charitable organizations. Proving home ownership and occupancy after your house has been affected by disaster can be difficult. Many people lose their entire homes, or so they lose all their documentation, deeds, wills, kind of mail, everything to show that they live there and that they own the house. So the goal of the project is to help low income communities, especially vulnerable Californians that live in mobile homes or off-grid homes in communities that are often affected by natural disaster. If a disaster survivor is denied FEMA assistance, our program will link the client with a pro bono attorney who will assist the client in the FEMA appeal process. This is done in a limited scope manner. Often FEMA will deny disaster assistance for failure to either prove ownership or to failure to prove occupancy. And this process can be overwhelming for a survivor that is facing many issues. So our program is here to help them. And I do have a few examples of clients that we do help and some clients that we would refer out. My first example is a client who is retired and married. He has a deed that was drafted by an out-of-state mortgage company. The title is in his and his wife's name as tenants by the entirety. However, California law doesn't recognize this type of a way to take a deed in your name. So he needs a new deed drafted. Our program would help this client. This is because this is part of the disaster preparedness. In the event that there was a disaster and the deed didn't list him and his wife's name properly, it may affect either his insurance claim or his FEMA assistance. So we would help him draft a new deed and get that filed. Another example is a client who is elderly on a fixed income, and she has a rural property that she's selling. And during the sale process, there's a old lien that's been discovered on her property. And so she needs that lien clear in order to help sell the property. So our program would not help this client. And the reason why, this is not related to disaster preparedness or disaster recovery. So our program doesn't just generally help people clear their title, just, for sale of a property or something like that. So it really needs to be connected to either disaster preparedness or disaster relief. Another example is a client's mobile home was damaged in a storm. The property is eligible for FEMA assistance. However, the mobile home owner, the title is listed in the deceased parent's name. So this is an example of where we would help the client. Essentially, we would help them with the FEMA appeal first, and secondly, we would help them transfer the property into their name from their parent. Lastly, we have a client who came in and said, they transferred the title to the property to their ex-husband years ago. They were cohabitating, and then she was evicted. So she now wants to get the title back in her name. Can we help? Our program wouldn't help with that. This has to do with, divorce and things like that. We don't help with that. So just generally speaking, our title clearing program does not provide legal assistance to general insurance or claims or denials or fraudulent property transfers, neighbor disputes, things like that. Our goal is to help with disaster preparedness and disaster recovery. And to be eligible for our program, clients should be in possession of the property, be either the owner or the heir, and there shouldn't be any dispute as to the ownership. And that concludes my presentation. And Alia has linked my program's website that has additional information. And you can contact me if you need to. I can put my email in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Edward. And I will go ahead and share the links to our website as well as the specific title clearing presentation, page. And I do want to open the floor to any questions. Maybe we can post them in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm Amrit Sandhu from the Sacramento Law Library. Wondering if your group is interested in doing webinars or workshops for our patrons.
Yes, absolutely. I can give you, I'll actually put my email in the chat right now. Feel free to reach out to me after this.
Yeah, and similarly, if you think a title clearing specific program would be informative, I'd love to do it. Any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or to unmute and ask them here.
There's a question on the chat that says, do you have a recommendation or a toolkit to advise people about how to secure precious documents in case of a disaster?
So what we do recommend is to have at least 2 different copies of documents, one of those being physical and kept in a go bag inside of a plastic folder, so that they, if in the case of getting wet, they can be protected. We also recommend to keep all of those documents and copies of IDs on a flash drive or other digital drive. So a flash drive is one option, but even just taking pictures of valuable belongings or documents, scanning those and keeping them on a photo library on the cloud works just as well. But that's a great question, because we do recommend that everybody has at least one digital copy of all important documents, contracts, and IDs.
A follow-up question is, what examples of documents are necessary?
Yeah, I covered it a little bit in the presentation, but we do recommend any IDs, social security card, insurance policies, EBT documents. We have a full list on our website as well. And oh, here, let me post our full website. The list I gave was not an exhaustive list, by the way. And then we have a question. Can you talk a little more about eligibility for free legal answers service? Yes, so when we say qualified, Californians, they need to fall or qualify as low income and have been impacted by a declared disaster. But we do, I don't mean to put you on the spot, David, but since you're here, if you don't mind answering that question either in the chat or unmuting as well.
Sure, it doesn't necessarily have to be a declared disaster, but a disaster-related legal question, and so that's a bit broader, but there are income and asset eligibility requirements. And it's generally, it's above 100% of the federal poverty line. It's, I believe, at 200% now. We had it higher during the pandemic, but the standards are changing with the federal declared disaster being lifted. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Emily, I'm sharing you the link to California Free Legal Answers from our website right now. I believe you might have a follow-up question, David. On average, how long does it take to connect a person to an attorney?
Sure. You know, that it can vary and there's no guarantee. The number of clients far exceeds our ability to answer timely. So it's really up to the volunteers which questions are selected. So it's not necessarily in order. And we have, a limited ability to, guarantee. Unfortunately, it's just we help a lot of clients. It's a high volume program, but we just can't give that. If they don't get a response within 35 days, the question will be withdrawn. That won't count against their number of questions, but it's just not unfortunately something that we can send people to with a guaranteed answer. We do our best. So if it's not answered within a month or 35 days, the question is withdrawn.
And okay, it looks like we have a question from Andy. What does it mean to be a participating county, and how do you become one if you are not listed? And that is in regards to title clearing, I believe.
Yes, so the program is meant for low income communities and persons, so targeting rural counties, things like that. So we have a list of the counties that we serve, but we generally will take an intake form from anyone really throughout California to see if we can help them, and that's really a lot for our grant reporting. So if your county is not listed, please still help someone submit an intake form, and we'll review it. We'll contact them, and if we can't help them for whatever reason, they're not in our program, we will certainly direct them to a different organization that can.
And then we have a question below here. How many disasters or which ones have you serviced so far approximately? We within our collaborative have different organizations that service counties across California. So it really every time there is a declared disaster, whether it's outreach at a disaster recovery center or kind of follow up, we do have the ability to be present for as different legal related issues arise or as different opportunities for outreach arise in different affected counties. I can also pass this off to Beth, who is our supervising attorney for disaster legal services. Not
Yes,
to put you on the spot.
Thanks for the question, Mary. We have responded to every major disaster since 2017, and the ones that we're working on right now are the two declared disasters this year, 4683 and 4699, the winter storms and the spring storms. And our partners across the state, as Alia mentioned, respond in different ways, either, whether it's visiting on site, and we also provide outreach materials by email regularly.
All right, thank you, Beth. And I'm not seeing any new questions in the chat, but we can just keep this open for a bit longer. Great question. How can law librarians help your efforts? We are really hoping to build relationships with all of you as law librarians when a patron has a disaster related question, especially a disaster related legal question. We would love to partner with you and provide more webinars and specific trainings like this on our specific programs, but also be able to help direct patrons to the direction of a legal provider who can help them, and especially if that falls within our programs. So please do contact me at my personal email. And if you are interested in setting up a presentation like this for your specific library, we're more than welcome to do so. And we have a question, do we conduct any on-the-ground outreach in disaster areas, or are you mostly virtual? So our programs we can conduct virtually, but we do provide clinics that are on the ground. And we also provide, as I mentioned, when different community events are open or disaster recovery centers, we do try and show up on the ground as much as possible to provide those legal resources. I should have mentioned this. We would love to also work with law libraries to set up different legal clinics, especially related to our programs. And so when it's possible, we also help run different on-the-ground clinics or virtual clinics. We're currently running one right now on FEMA that is mostly virtual and asynchronous. But we have run clinics in the past that are on the ground. Do you have any brochures or flyers we can have on hand to give to patrons? Yes, absolutely. We have a variety on our specific programs, but then also more general legal disaster preparedness handouts. Somebody had asked about what documents to prepare. We actually have a checklist. And so, I am more than happy to share that. I would recommend starting at our website. And if you have specific requests for flyers, we can also help share additional ones with you. Are clinics available in different languages? I'm going to pass this question to Beth, if that's okay.
We try to have Spanish interpreters available. But if we know ahead of time that there is a population with a language need other than English or Spanish, we can try to arrange interpretation or translation for that language. I hope that answers your question, Emery.
Yes, thank you.
I will say our partners at Cal OES Listos provide quite a few languages, but it is general disaster preparedness and recovery resources. It's not specifically legal. But if you are looking for any disaster related resources that are not in English, that aren't necessarily legal, I am happy to provide you with some of those resources as well. Yes, definitely. One thing I can do, Diane, if it's possible, I can send you a list of our flyers and handouts just because we do have quite a few. Would it be possible to disseminate them to folks in this webinar afterwards?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And also just regarding programs and online programs, all of our patrons have a similar interest. And so it's possible that we could do programs that are of, statewide that anyone can join if you have that kind of Zoom capacity, or it could be individualized per library, focused more on the counties because, maybe everybody has different needs, floods versus fires, or, those kinds of things. So lots of options.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You're searching for a career that makes a difference, you can find it as a medical assistant. For over 50 years, Carrington College has been preparing students.
Oops, I'm going to just mute you.
Well, I don't see any more questions, but I just want to thank you all for presenting to us today. It's really important information for us to be able to share and get out. And it's wonderful to know we have you as partners in this, it's challenging area to deal with. So it's nice to know we have experts as friends. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for the really crucial resources that you provide to communities, especially in areas where patrons might not have easily accessible, website or just bandwidth to access legal issues. We're very open to partnering with you and providing more presentations like this, webinars, setting up clinics. Please do consider us a resource, and please do feel free to email me as much or as little as you'd like. Thank you all and have a great day.